Deal or no deal? That was the question just about all afternoon long on the future of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, better known as DACA. Early today, Senator Jeff Flake told the press, yes, a bipartisan group will have a bill out on immigration reform this week. Then Senator John Cornyn said no, the talks were ongoing. A few hours later, the White House reiterated no deal. And almost immediately after that, that bipartisan group of 6 senators declared, yes, an agreement in principle had been reached. But as of this taping, there was no word on whether the president or other congressional leaders had bought in just yet. You still with me? Details aside, if our congressmen can't even get on the same page about whether or not there's a deal in place, is there any hope our legislative leaders and the rest of the country can ever come together? Or was what the president said earlier this week spot on?
Our system is designed right now that everybody should hate each other.
Clearly, we need the message of my next guest now more than ever. What Unites Us? Reflections on Patriotism is the latest book from former CBS Evening News anchor Dan Rather. In it, he writes, dividing people and stoking animosity can pave a path to power. But these divisions inevitably come at the expense of the long-term health and welfare of the nation as a whole. When we sow seeds of division, hatred, and small-mindedness, we falter. As a wave of anxiety sweeps our nation, as big challenges loom before us, I feel an urgency. So do I. Dan Rather also hosts The Big Interview on Access TV and joins me now. Dan, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you write about immigration in this book, and you write, I mean, the common theme for me is trying to identify common ground. Is there common ground on anything but the most superficial of issues when it comes to this contentious issue, immigration?
I do think there's common ground.
Where is it?
Beginning, I think the common ground is that overwhelmingly Americans in general, whatever their party, whatever their ideology, agree with the basic American tradition of taking in people from other places. Now, once you get past that fundamental common ground, there are a lot of different opinions, many of them based on race, ethnicity, religion. But what I think is important, and the reason I wanted to do What Unites Us, is it's just subjects such as this that certain politicians and political parties, and for that matter, ideological interest, they focus on the division. They try to put off to the side the fundamental agreement we have about such things as integration, public school education, a long list of other things. And for their own partisan, political, and/or ideological reasons, they want to emphasize the divisions because that benefits them personally and/or their own cause. My point is that if we listen to those, it's very easy to listen to that and think, gosh, the whole country is falling apart at the seams, we can't agree on anything. That's not true. We agree on all kinds of different things. And the definition of patriotism, by the way, is another tool that those who seek to benefit from our division use. They want to confuse patriotism with nationalism. Look it up in the dictionary. These are two different definitions.
You're a cup half full guy. I'm a cup totally empty guy. And I'll tell you why. Let me read from your first line on the press in your book. In his novel 1984, George Orwell laid out a dystopian vision of a world where words cease to have meaning, history is continually rewritten, and the notion of truth is forever lost. The book could have been called 2018. So in a world of alternative facts, no agreed upon facts, no agreed upon truths, what's the fix for what ails us in terms of the press and our lack of trust in it?
The fix is take a deep breath, remember the word steady, hold steady, know our history, remember our history, and keep in mind that those voices who are trying to convince us that 2018 is the year of all of this stuff, yes, with our top political leaderships, and let's have it for what it is, with this president and this administration, if you listen only to them and follow only their acts, you will come to the conclusion all is lost, if you want to say half empty. But my point is that the country as a whole is smarter than this. Listen, you and I have been around a long time, unfortunately, and we have a lot of faults, we Americans. But one of the things the people of this country are good at, they're pretty good at separating brass tacks from bullshine. And I think when someone says facts don't matter, there's no such thing as a fact, people understand, no, 2 and 2 equals 4, it doesn't equal 5.
Is part of the problem, though, that the mainstream press has crossed the line into advocacy rather than straight reporting in too many instances?
No, I think there's plenty to worry about with that, as a matter of fact.
That there is plenty to worry about there.
There's plenty to worry about, in fact, and I do not accept myself from that criticism. But at a time such as this, that is outweighed by the following. There's been a renewal of deep digging investigative reporting, with the press doing exactly what they're supposed to do, which is to be a check on power, yes, including presidential power. And so you can say on the one hand, well, the press is going too far with its advocacy, and I think in some cases it does. My argument with the press, including some of my own work, is this: if you stick to the facts and an analysis of the facts based on sort of let's connect the dots, that's fine. But the idea of just shouting at one another and not being open to any other point of view, that won't work. That doesn't work in our system.
Did Michael Wolff, in gaining access through, I wouldn't, maybe deception is too strong a word, but saying whatever he had to say to get access to Right Fire and Fury, did he cross the line?
I think he did, yes. I paused only for a second because I hate to judge other people's work and judgment.
Well, let's judge you then. Did you cross the line in 1974 when you were in Houston?
No.
Our President of the United States said to you, are you running for something? And you said, no, sir, are you, to Richard Nixon?
I said, no, sir, Mr. President.
Mr. President, you did say that. That is correct. Did you cross the line that day?
No, I did not cross the line. And with Michael Wolff, look, my surprise about the whole Michael Wolff phenomenon, this new book he has out, God bless him, he's selling a lot of books, is it raises new questions. We don't need new questions, but new questions about President Trump and what kind of White House he's running. How in the world did he ever okay this guy coming into the White House? Because Michael Wolff's reputation, whether you agree with it or don't like it or not, was very clear. The fact he let him on the inside of the White House, but that doesn't answer your question. Did he cross a line? I don't think so. That you said... You used the word deception.
Well, in terms of saying what he admitted in an interview this week, I think I may have been with Chuck Todd, that he said what he had to say to gain access to the big players in the administration.
Well, I don't agree with that. That if you tell an untruth, if you tell a lie, then I don't agree with that. And I do think he can be faulted for that. I'm not here to dump on him at all. But I think he can be faulted. That you use whatever arguments you have to use, but they have to be consistent with the law, they have to be consistent with journalistic ethics, and they have to be consistent with your own conscience.
You know, Fitzgerald said, as you well know, there are no second acts in American lives. You have disproven that notion with millions of followers on Facebook, News and Guts. But while social media has been this incredibly powerful force to get information out, in many ways it fuels the cynicism. It spreads the alternative facts. It convinces many people that you don't need activism outside of your computer. So is it a net plus in politics in 2018?
It's a fair question. I think it is a net plus. But I'm open to the argument that says, well, Dan, if it's a net plus, it's a very close call, because all of the things you mentioned, that it fuels cynicism. It allows people to smear other people's reputation with anonymity. All of those things. We're still trying to find our way in the post-digital age, into the internet right beyond. My hope is that as time goes along, increasingly the benefits of things such as social media and the internet as a whole will outweigh the downside, but that still hangs in the balance.
You know, you write also, we only have a minute or so left, you write about service, and beautifully, I think, and I am one who believes that mandatory public service, maybe it's in the civil sector as opposed to the military, would be one of the things that unites this country. Do you?
I agree completely. We're not on the winning side with this argument, at least not yet.
I know that.
But I certainly would agree and strongly favor some form of mandatory public service. Now, it can, for me at least, be along the lines of what the French have or had. That is, you can choose military service for a shorter time, or something like Teach for America for a longer time. But to have everybody invested in the country by doing some form of service, do I think it ought to be mandatory? Yes. Do I think that's going to happen? Not anytime soon.
Speaking of service and the voluntary, you're a fan of Seth Moulton's, from what I understand, are you not?
Well, I don't endorse candidates, but I am a fan of Seth Moulton's, and I'll tell you why. Here's a young man who went to Harvard, majored in physics, by the way, didn't take the easy way, Could have come out and made a ton of money, didn't. And when I met him, he was in the midst of his service in Iraq. He was not just a United States Marine, he was a fighting Marine for at least 3 tours of duty. Never bragged about it, was there 4 tours of duty. And I do think he is the kind of person, Republican Party, Democratic Party, or mugwumps, who should be running for public, and on a personal basis, I admire him tremendously.
So where do you find time to win HQ trivia with your family? Talk about uniting people at Christmas. I mean, really? Is that a true story?
That's a true story. As Dr. Henry Kissinger once said in another context, that story has the advantage of being true.
It does. Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations on the book. I said when you got here, David McCullough was here a few months ago with The American Spirit, and if people are looking for an antidote to the hopelessness in this country, I would say read What Unites Us and David McCullough, and you'll be on the path to that. Pleasure to see you.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thank you so
much.
Good luck.
For your Godspeed.
Time. Appreciate it. The book again is What Unites Us, Reflections on Patriotism. Dan's at the Berkeley Performance Center tonight at 8 p.m.